Welcome back to Digesting Dark, where we were tackling the Netflix series Dark one episode at a time. For this podcast, we watched the entire series of Dark, and we are here to answer your questions with a special guest. I am Zach Brooks, and I am joined by the stranger version of my Jonas, Aaron Brooks.
How's it going? Good to be back again.
Yes, back. We've had a little bit of a break. It's been a few days.
Yeah, less of a break than between our episode 7 and 8 podcasts, just because life happens. But
yeah,
still,
don't remind people of that though.
Yeah, exactly. I don't really. Yeah, still, less tragic circumstances this time. It's a reminiscing of sorts.
Yes, and our triketta would not be complete without the Adam to our stranger and Jonas. He has also been podcasting about Dark over. And he's written books. He works for ESPN Fantasy. He can tell you all of the great things that he's done. It is the alt version of AJ. That is AJ Mass. AJ Mass, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me on. I have digested Dark along with you, vicariously so.
How's it sitting? Is it feeling good?
Could use a little antacid, but I don't want the acid to spill over and wrinkle my flesh to make me more of an Adam than you've already made me. So
that's true. Aaron also sometimes goes by AJ, although he's saying not as much anymore, but still works to have the alt version, the one that still goes by AJ with us.
Yeah, it all depends on the time.
Yes, and your perspective and what world you're in. So,
mm-hmm.
Of course, we've gone through all of Dark, one episode at a time. So all of those are in the podcast feed if you've missed any of them. And we'll probably keep continuing to update this feed. The first thing we want to do was to get some feedback from listeners and see what people thought of the finale and what questions they still had. So we're starting with that today. And then who knows what the future holds? We have not seen beyond this cycle to know anything in the future.
Yep, it's all new.
It's all new from this point forward. We're like Adam after he was interrupted by Claudia. So make sure you stay subscribed to this feed on any podcatcher that you use, and keep sending in your feedback, digestingdarkpod@gmail.com. When we compile more feedback, maybe we'll do another one of these feedback shows, or some sort of next property, whether it's another TV show or a movie. So let us know what you want to hear, and stay subscribed. All right, so before we get into feedback from people, AJ, I know I haven't gotten a chance to listen, as I was saying to you before we started, but you've done a couple podcasts over on post-show recaps for this season of Dark. So what are your overall thoughts on the series, how it wrapped up, and how season 3 went?
Yeah, you can, of course, listen to that take. Josh Wigler and I covered that show a little bit, and certainly not as in-depth as you guys. We didn't go episode by episode. We just kind of did a season 1 and 2 recap last year, and then we kind of did a season 3 preview, and then a season 3 recap. So we kind of just, a sort of appetizing Dark, I suppose, to your digesting.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Yeah, I loved the show. I mean, that's the short version. Loved it, full stop. I think it was a fantastic wrap up. I love the fact that it was both an ending that you could appreciate and take it at face value, and also it left enough crumbs there for people who perhaps have different interpretations of how it ended to kind of wax poetic and have their brains, fried in the infinite loops of paradoxes going on there. So I think it served both purposes. It was a nice wrap up, and it could be a finite ending, but you could also dig deeper and create your own adventure, as it were.
Yes. We did have people who were talking about the choose your own adventure model, that they'd like to see a Dark where you, like a Bandersnatch, where you pick the next action that you take based on where the characters are.
That's a hefty lift. But I do think the nature of fan fiction certainly is out there for people who want to continue the stories and write their own stuff. But I mean, I don't need to see Baron and Yansha do anymore. I think I'm happy with what they gave me, and I'm happy to revisit it from time to time. But I don't want the story to go on. I think the ending is perfect.
So you're not with me on the one more season, a couple more episodes, nothing like that.
No, I think they have answered everything that they need to answer, and anything that they haven't answered, there's there's enough there for you to speculate at will.
Yeah. And Aaron, how about you? How are you feeling a couple episodes removed from our finale podcast? Have your thoughts changed at all?
Yeah, that's I'm gonna sound like a echo of my alt self here. Because that's pretty similar to how I feel about the show as a whole. Yeah, I love the ending. And I don't want to see a single another episode. Definitely not 4 more in a 4th season with Tannhaus that you suggested. It's like, or the Bandersnatch thing. These are all things that people who aren't Baron or Jonte, which I know I'm saying those names wrong, but the 2 creators, these are ideas that the 2 creators would never come up with or do. It's kind of similar to when we talked about like earlier in the season moments or earlier in the series moments, how we would have done them and how we're glad they didn't do them the way we did them. Mm-hmm. I think this ending is included in that. And yeah, the ending is as deep as you want to go with it. And I am one, obviously, doing a podcast where I've dedicated days to this show at this point. Right. Literally days.
And lots of pieces of paper.
Yeah, and I wrote it out pieces of paper style and had them like spread around me, like Ulrich or Katarina or many other characters who I got lost in the labyrinth. So I was very happy that with this finale that you could very much dig deeper into it. Just right down to the final like shawarma style post-credit MCU scene at the dinner table, which is up there. I mean, it's up there with one of my favorite scenes in the show just because I got to see Peter end up with Benny out in public finally, which I'd been really wanting to see more than anything in the show. Yeah. So, yeah, very important moment for me.
I will say, too, that for me, the further away I've gotten from the finale, I'm more satisfied with it than I was. I mean, there are definitely things that I have my list that I can always look back on my list of like, what about these 20 things, which will probably come up at some point during this podcast. And those are the details, but in terms of an overall story and where they were going, I think this was the way they could wrap it up, and it would be putting the show in a good perspective. So, I'm glad that I got to have my thoughts in the moment when you and I talked last week. Yeah, and I think that was helpful for me just to talk through where things stood and where things ended up, and. Like that whole idea that you brought up about what we know is a drop, what we don't know is an ocean, that does really say just because we saw this one dinner and it seems like things are good does not necessarily mean this is like this paradise world as people were looking for.
Yeah, we saw one dinner. We didn't see the rest of the world. We didn't see any other characters. We don't know what we really saw there or what world it is. So. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is like less than it's like a drop of a drop of a drop. Like it's such a small amount of information that so many, I think, people, one way or the other, are maybe gleaning more of than they can, really. Mm-hmm. So.
All right. Well, as we're talking about the ending, I did put a question about the ending as our first, because the beginning is the ending. So, AJ, I'll throw this to you first, because people have heard us talk about the ending a lot. What is your overall take on the ending? Are you happy that the knot is undone and that all the suffering is over, or are you sad that there's no world where Martha and Joe?
Well, I don't think that's the ending. I don't think that the knot is undone. My take on the ending is that the whole universe. This was not the end of a cycle. This of the knot, and when they all go to time dust, that is just the resetting of the cycle, and they're going right back to the start, and they are living in this infinite hell. And I think that's the beautiful darkness of the show, is that everything that happened in that final episode through the time tunnel and going and visiting Tannhaus and stopping his kids from his son in the son's family from going to the bridge. All of that always happened, mm-hmm. and it's just part of the loop. And they are continuing. It's not a happy ending. It just isn't a happy ending. That's part of what I like about it.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that ties in with the beginning of the episode? How we see, because we talked on our podcast that we were not sure why they opened the finale with. Showing Michael hanging himself and then some version of Jonas waking up to that. do you think that ties into this always continuing to happen?
Yeah, I think the end is the beginning is the end. You end the show with the last episode starting the same way the first episode did. I think that's part of that is just creative license and a really nice bookend to it. Mm-hmm. But I really do think that if you analyze all of the timey-wimey stuff that they explain there, you get a situation where, and there's multiple interpretations of this, but my interpretation of this is that you can't have the paradox of Jonas and Martha existing and non-existing. Mm-hmm. That's the paradox that I think is still sitting at the end. Like, how can they have stopped Tannhaus from inventing time travel if he didn't invent time travel in the first place for them to exist? And you get rid of that paradox by applying the whole Schrodinger's cat thing to this world as well. Whereas, yes, he does invent it and not invent it at the same time. And one of the explanations I've heard is that, Jonas and Martha, by not being part of our world, are the observers. And once they see that they don't crash, the two possibilities collapse, and that's the only timeline that exists. Yeah, I'm okay if that's your interpretation. It's not mine, but I think it's a sound one by all the rules that we've been playing by. But I like to think that what we're seeing is a world where, much like in the original, Jonas is able to be saved and not saved at the same time, because, as they explain, the two timelines are existing on top of each other, just opposite sides of the loop. I think this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing the dinner scene is on, side B of the loop, and there's another world, side A of the loop, where he does invent time travel, and it's just, again, we're caught in a loop that we're not able to fully observe everything, your drop, your ocean kind of thing. It's going to go on there, but those lights are blinking, and everything will happen as it's always happened, just maybe at a different time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that read of it. Aaron, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's of like more succinct, less abstract handling of kind of a lot of the ways I felt about the finale as well.
And it really almost paints the Jonas and Martha like that as a switch point in the middle of another one of these infinity symbols. So it's like, AJ said, like on top of the loop on top of the loop, but it is like almost like a loop, like as you expand out, there's actually another loop. Like it kind of reminds me of the end of Men in Black, when you have the marble and you go out and it's actually aliens playing like golf with the marble. That's what it sort of reminds me of.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's creating a new cycle, and it's an unending amount of cycles where the pieces are just rearranged.
Well, now I really want to see the other side of that loop, the B side.
You'll never stop wanting to see the other side of the loop. That's the thing. Yeah, at some
keep
point,
pulling on that thread.
At some point, the Netflix executives, which is the sharpest of the severing knives, had to cut it, and they cut it at the perfect point, which is 3 seasons.
I bet it was not Netflix that said 3. I bet Netflix was like, yeah, you can keep going with this forever.
Oh, I don't know. They don't seem to really support this show, but that's up for another podcast probably on why Netflix seems to hate their shows after 3 seasons.
The marketing, yes, the marketing decisions of Netflix.
Look, guys, this isn't a conversation about the OA. This is a conversation about Dark.
Oh my God, how did you know, AJ? Why did you? Oh, AJ, my other love, the OA.
Yes, he has PTSD on the OA. I have PTSD on Lost. That's why it works so well to talk about this show, because it's like the combination of the two.
I'll refrain from doing some sort of bizarre interpretive dance.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So that question came from Troy. I do have the names written down. I just will probably forget to say who did it. So let's get into some general questions that I have. So I separated all of these into like categories. So Sam Whiting, and Aaron, we'll go to you with this first. He said he would love to know, did you get spoiled on anything on Dark before you finished it?
Well, only by the love. No one's ever complained about the Netflix autoplay feature, right? Well, I was a victim of the Netflix autoplay feature. In between, I think episodes 5 and 6, I was on my fourth or fifth rewatch of episode 5, waiting to watch episode 6 because we were like 2 or 3 days in between podcasting, and I did fall asleep during dark at one point with my notebook on me, and I woke up in the middle of episode 6 in the trailer park scene with Peter, which I like literally woke up as it was just starting. He was eating the soup, and I couldn't take my eyes off it. I watched the whole scene, and in context, out of context, it's an incredibly shocking scene, especially for me since Peter was my favorite character. So I did have Peter's death spoiled like the day before by my own fault, kind of. So
by your own sleepiness.
Yeah,
and you did do a good job because you had told me that you got spoiled on something, but you didn't say what. And we recorded a podcast, and you did not at all reveal that Peter was going to die. I don't think there's any way that anybody would have known that anything was going to happen with Peter. And then when I watched the episode, I knew you were spoiled on something, and I knew you were so interested in the woman who drowned at the lake. And so when I saw Katerina get killed at the lake by her own mother, I thought for sure that must have been what you were spoiled on. And somehow, out of the fate of this show, that did not happen.
Yeah, but either way, like I've really got to commend the dark marketing team overall, and like the just like dark fan community as a whole. It's like you saw with like Game of Thrones and other shows, like there's kind of was a section of people like even when like Star Wars came out, like wanted to spoil it before it came out.
Yep, that did happen.
This show, the large amount of the digging deep community in this show seems to get it and seems to understand that you experiencing it when you experience it and how you experience it is important to you. And like people aren't like in a rush to spoil things. Also, the show is so complex that it's hard to like simply point to one thing and be like, oh man, that spoils the whole show for me. So it's both I think a compliment to the show and the community that seems to be drawn to it.
Yeah, so. Especially as you get out of the first couple seasons, I really think that, in the first season, somebody might say to you, Mikkel is Michael, and that would spoil it. But then it starts, like you said, it starts getting so complicated that what are you going to say? Like, alternate Eve who didn't save Jonas is going to get a huge scar on her face, and then she's going to kill Jonas.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's just, there's nothing. Yeah, it's really well designed as a show.
AJ, what about you? You went through Dark probably a little bit faster than we did, I'm assuming. Did you end up getting spoiled on anything during that process?
Really hard to get spoiled when you start watching at noon. Pretty much watch it straight through. So nice. I'm very fortunate that it's a show that my wife was really into as well, and my teenage son really got involved with it. So we just sat down as a family and started, and boom, ran right through it.
So was it hard to keep, like, I feel like if you were binging this and not sitting there and like really thinking it through or taking notes, was it hard to follow what was going on, or were you guys just all in?
I think for me and my son, it was definitely my brain just kind of works in a way where this show kind of lands really well for me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, certainly I watched it a second time before I podcasted about it just to kind of look deeper and kind of think about it more. But after 3 episodes, we took a break because my wife's brain was really steaming there. So we took a little break to eat. But no, I really enjoyed it and was able to follow it. It's complicated, but it is as complicated as it is. They do such a great job of holding your hand through it and explaining what's going on for the stuff you need to know right now. Mm-hmm. That's what I really enjoy about the show more than anything else is that, they end with a really gorgeous montage, but it really does walk you through everything you learned in that hours episode. So I was not confused as to what was going on. Certainly I had no idea where they were taking me. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a perfect balance there of, okay, I didn't quite get that. There might be a scene or two where I was like, I need to watch that again to really understand what's happening. But no, I think they went straight from point A to point Z. And what I love about the show, when you do binge it, is I found this because I binged the first season on its own and the second season on its own as well. I think it does a really great job of leading you right up to the point where you figure out what's the big reveal about maybe 5 minutes before they do it. So like Michael was like, oh, wait a second. Oh, okay, they're telling me, so I'm not that smart. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm really smart figuring it out. Like, oh yeah, well, I'm supposed to, and the stranger is actually oh, you're telling me that now. Okay, great. So, it was fun for me when I would figure something out maybe an episode before as opposed to 5 minutes before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that would happen sometimes for me, and it's hard for me to remember, especially for the season 1 and season 2 stuff, because we were rewatching all of that. For season 3, I feel like I was always on my toes. I don't know if I ever really got ahead of the show ever, and part of that might have been just because I was like, it is a different experience just sitting and watching it and not having your phone in front of you to take notes, which was what I was doing. So like, it was like every little thing, and I was rewinding all the time. I think it's a much different experience the way I was watching it, and even the way Aaron watched it, because he didn't take notes when he would watch it the first time. He would take notes the second time, whereas I took notes the first time. So
Yeah, I do think that where your brain is focusing on. I mean, I'm enjoying it, just on the visual and figuring it out. Like, you catch certain things just because you're supposed to look for things by season 3. So I was trying to figure out exactly how the reflection of the mirror world was working for the first couple of episodes, because I did notice you notice the doors on the wrong side and the house. I'm like, wow, did they just build a reverse set? Did they shoot it through a mirror? Like, because the text is forward. Like, oh my goodness. Like, but I caught the whole scars on the opposite sides and figured that they were just doing some sort of match edit or something. But yeah, no, they actually just shot the whole damn thing in reverse and told them to use their left hands if they were right-handed. Josh Wigler did an interview with the creators.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said they shot in the rooms and just said, if you're left-handed, use your right hand. They got a car from England to shoot a couple car scenes with the opposite steering wheel on the other side, but otherwise it was just, they were just acting in the space.
It just adds to everything being a little bit off as you're watching.
Yeah, you don't quite know what's off.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's like I've said it in one of the episodes. This show is very, very meta without being annoying about it or fourth wall breaking about it. The experience of the show, how deep you can look into any of it, is really up to you, right down to the ending. It just sticks to that throughout. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, on top of that, I think some of the stuff that that didn't end up being important, but that I kind of picked up as I was watching it. Just again, it's not canon because we don't actually get a scene explaining these things. But in my mind, I think everything is there, breadcrumbs wise. Like just the thing about Inez, like the fact that it's clear that she was molested by her father. I mean, it's not ever spelled out, but
it's in the subtext of the conversations. I mean, if you go,
she's got the porno mag.
When she go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, she has the porno mag, and she says, "Have you seen a penis other than your father's?" You're like, wait,
yes,
that's a weird thing to say.
So I didn't want to bring it up during the episode it was brought up, just because a little bit off subject. I'm a big fan of To Catch a Predator. Like, I've watched every episode of that series throughout.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of what it's about, but I've watched every episode multiple times, like Dark, almost as much as Dark. And so sometimes my views of things outside of, get colored because of that previous experience. So I was paranoid that was what was going on. But by the end, I agree with you that they didn't have to show you a scene of like a shadowy Enos father figure in the corner coming into her room and her but with that conversation I was like, girls don't just say, have you seen a penis besides your father's, do they? And there's some other
on top of that, Egon saying that he got the name of the abortionist from Daniel, which is Inez's father. Yep. And you're like, and then you think back to season 1, we're like, oh, Inez is adopting Mikkel because she had a kid but lost it. Oh, we've seen an abortionist who's catering to young children. It's like it all makes sense. Where it's like, okay, it all, again, this entire alt world that has broken off from Tantalus' time machine is just a hell dimension, and this is just another further example of it.
Yep, and I think the final one we see is one that is a hell that's going to finally make Hannah a believer in hell.
Yeah, exactly. Although, has she really escaped, or is I think one of the things that I think is fun to play with and muse after the fact is that although we know that this baby that she has at the dinner scene is not our Jonas, even though she says she likes the name. I mean, that's just a cute little wink and a nod that she likes the name. But I mean, it's not like she's the most faithful person in the world. I mean, we assume that Mikkel's the father of Jonas, but do we really know that Mikkel's the father of Jonas, or is it some extra marital affair that she's repeated in this timeline, and that we will get a repeat of Jonas? I mean, we don't really know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's not canon, but something to think about.
Right, and that's one of the things that is. As much as I want the answers, it's like some of the answers are actually in there. Like, for example, one of the questions I had, for the longest time, I was like, well, what was Enos's baby? What was the deal with the baby that Enos lost? Like, who is that baby going to end up being? Because she probably had the baby, and it's going to end up having been, traveling back in time, and is going to be somebody's father. And then the baby never came back up again. But, I never thought about it in context of kind of some of the other things that we know about her and the little stuff that we learn about her. So, that, and then we see the abortion doctor. So that's just like an aspect of it that I didn't even think about. And it also kind of colors every scene with Daniel Kahnwald as well. Like, we see him a little bit, and, he was doing stuff that we didn't even know about, apparently.
Sure. And this is, we're talking about cycles and things repeating themselves. And, if that's happening to Ines, and we know that it's happening to
Katerina as well,
to Katerina's mother, who we see at the abortion doctor. So I mean, her name is Albers as a 12-year-old, and she grows up, her name is still Albers. That's a little weird. I'm just saying. So yeah, it's a little bit of a repeating cycle there on that front as well. Not to mention the fact that we're rooting for, the incest, quote unquote, of Jonas and Martha, his aunt. It's like family relationships in this world are normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's, and we actually had some questions about that too, about, not only do we have Jonas and Martha, but Bartos and Celia have that relationship as well. That, if you track back, that Celia is the great aunt of Bartos, because she's the daughter of his grandfather, grandfather. So
I mean that's the whole incestuous origin, going back to basically start the family line that they are the product of. Everybody who's part of this, except of course for Regina, who is pure.
Except everybody who's left at that dinner table. Yeah. And then that's, that I think we talked about this too, that dinner table, it really answers so many questions for you about these open-ended, who's this person's parents, who's this person's father, mother. By those people being at that dinner table, they are not tied in these lines that were part of these loops.
Yeah, I think it logically, it makes perfect sense that these are the people who are there, and it does wrap it up really nicely by who's not there. Well, obviously the people who can't be there in this world, if you assume that he never invented time travel, then these people were never born. I think for me that's a satisfying ending. It's also a little too simple for me for a show that this has been this complicated, and which is why I like the idea. And again, not canon, but the idea of Tannhaus's granddaughter, the baby's body is never found. That's what they establish, and her name is Charlotte, and that's coincidence, could be. The baby's never found because a baby in a body of water might not be found. I mean, we certainly have seen examples of people dying and being drowned and their bodies never turn up. I mean, that especially a child that small. However, you could argue that if Adam had sent Elizabeth and Charlotte back to deliver baby Charlotte to Tannhaus, why couldn't Eve take this granddaughter of his from the crash site and deliver it all the way back in time, and she grows up and becomes the Charlotte who the Watch, that old man townhouse has in that scene, which then makes townhouse part of the loop, which means that again the loop is not destroyed and it's just part of the cycle. I mean, it's conceivable. Yep. It's not explained. It's not canon, but it would make sense that then that townhouse cycle of, hey, somebody died and I want time travel. Well, it's the man who gives the watch to blind Tannhaus. It's blind Tannhaus for working with the stranger, and it's H.G. Tannhaus who creates the time machine. So I mean, again, it's the same motivation for all three of them.
Yeah, and it works out perfect. It's referenced in the show with the older Tannhaus being obsessed with trying to bring his wife back. I mean, it's said through that's like the legacy of the Tannhauses is trying to recover a lost loved one. So. Yeah,
and that was where I got hung up so much, and still am a little bit hung up on, is who was that? We got that old man for one scene, and he's got the watch that says for Charlotte, and is talking about Sigmundes and the idea of bringing people back, but we really don't know much else about him, to the point where, my read on it was that when H.G. Tannhaus creates this time machine in 1986 and splits these time loops, that he also, like, in addition to creating them, he sends a version of himself potentially back, and maybe he becomes that man or that man's father, maybe, and he's one of the ancestors of the Tannhaus family.
It's possible. I think it's a little more complicated than this show tends to be, but we've already seen family lines being the progenitors of themselves. So I don't think that's the story that they're saying, because again, the fact that Tannhaus is not part of the loop is kind of the point of them determining that he's the origin point. But again, we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe it's this family is always interested in trying to change the past, and that's what's passed on between Tannhaus's great grandfather.
And the irony of the entire show is that Tannhaus is much like Adam and Eve and even Claudia. His entire goal is to preserve his lineage, to preserve his children. The show is all about making sure that your family is able to go on, and yet he's the only person who doesn't realize he has actually succeeded, because by succeeding, he makes the time machine, which creates Jonas and Martha and all those shenanigans, which ends up saving his son's life, but he'll never know in this version of the timeline, which is fascinating.
That was a little bit of what we talked about too in the finale podcast, is just that that Merrick comes back, and it's just like it's like a weird thing happened. He had like this guardian angel that showed up that stopped him. He has no idea that, had those people not shown up, had Jonas and Martha not shown up, he would have died and they never would have gotten a moment together. So that irony that they have no idea what that moment back in Tannhaus's shop is.
Sure. But if he dies 2 months from now, for some other freak thing, because time wants to make sure that Tannhaus creates a time machine, maybe just the origin point just gets shifted by a couple of months, But that would be a different knot in a different loop, and still wouldn't change the fact that the people, the characters that we know, are still cycling around and around and around in the roller coaster of doom and destruction and sad Ulrich waiting by the clock and all those things.
Yep.
All right, so let's see. I don't even know where to go from there. Let's talk a little bit about the music in Dark. So Dave LaRochelle, he sent in a cool note that I don't think we realized. So Apparat, who's the artist who sings the opening credits of Dark, the singer's birthday is June 27th. So that's just like a fun little... They use that date as the date of the apocalypse. Obviously, an important date in the show. It's when the season 3 premiere came out, and that's the birth date of Apparat, which apparently must be one person or twins.
Fun.
Another note, some of these are just comments. So Sarah Sophia, she sent in and was talking about she actually wrote this email when she was at the beginning of season 3, and we were asking about the German song Irgendwo, Irgendwann that plays, which also happens to be the song that plays over the closing credits after the dinner scene. And so she pointed out some context around that it was a very popular song in the 80s. In Germany, it was sung by Nena, who is the same person who sang 99 Luftballons. So, and yeah, I looked it up. I watched the YouTube video for it, the music video as well. So I just thought it was very, very interesting that Sarah wrote in some feedback, and apparently we talked about that song way back at the beginning of season 3, and that ended up being the last thing that we hear on this show.
I just find it amusing that you kids are so young that, like, you know, I heard the song and I was like, oh, it's Nena. So, you know, I'm just old enough to remember her.
Right. That's why you're the Adam on this podcast.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Where should we go next? We've got some questions.
Talking about the music real quick.
Yeah.
Since I know we are all kind of missing Dark, I've actually found quite a bit of the music I've really, for one, found very, very thematically fitting for the show. But one artist particularly, I feel like kind of her music's used in the show quite a bit, and I just wanted to highlight her. And it's Asif Avindan. And so she's an Israeli songwriter and singer. But you listen to the music, they used the Ariandi song particularly, which is called the Labyrinth song. Mm-hmm. But if you listen to that whole album, which I think it's called like Gold Shadow or something, but it's like a labyrinth inside a head. That whole album seems like it like inspired or fits like the show. So if you're looking for kind of some good kind of thematic music to listen to, similar, it's not quite as intense as a lot of the music in the show, but I suggest SF Avantad.
Yeah, the music was fantastic. I particularly like the Hosier song, that Into the Woods song. That one really stuck with me there. And as someone who has listened to this podcast of yours since the beginning, I'm on the podcast now, so I just have to do it. Ariadne. Every single time, nails on the chalkboard, guys. Ariadne.
Ariande Grande?
Not Andy. Ariadne.
You know, you're not alone in that feedback. Those emails were not included in this document that I put together.
Make sure to keep that inbox full.
Yeah. No, Aaron and I are kind of in our own little loop of mispronouncing names. I mean, you came in here and you said Ines, and we've been saying Ines, and yeah, you know, I don't know. Pronunciation, sometimes it's hard. But on that note, let's talk about some language things that we have. So we had people write in talking about whether they watched the show in the English subtitles, the English dubbing. And one person said that they actually wonder, so they said that they do not know German. But do we think that there is a divide between German speakers experiencing this and Americans or UK English speakers experience it and getting two different shows? Not that it makes a huge difference, but there is virtually no way that the English subtitles or dubbing can be exact if you think linguistically of how many words there are using. They're using over 3 seasons, roughly 8 episodes of runtime and an hour length, give or take a few minutes. So this was Nick. Nick said that he wants to ask his German friends in Frankfurt to watch and let him know kind of how different it is in terms of following the convoluted plot in just natively in German versus trying to follow along with English. So Aaron, we'll go to you first on that.
So just how different I think it could be?
Yeah. Do you think that the show is able enough to translate into English how complex and how convoluted the story is?
Yeah, I think there's there's like the little details we ask questions about, like, you know, why are they coming back to school in November? Things like that. I mean, but in general, I think it's about the same experience. If anything, that because there are subtitles, you had to literally pay attention that much more. But that's the only difference, I think, in my opinion. I think it only added to kind of the unusualness of the tone of the show, maybe. And maybe there's certain things that if you're familiar with Germany aren't as weird for you seeing. So maybe it was less distracting in that way. But no, I think in general, a word here or there being mistranslated, I don't think equals a totally different experience. No.
Mm-hmm. And Nick did say that he actually couldn't decide if he wanted to watch with subtitles or dubs. And so he said he switched from time to time between subtitles and dubs, depending on what he was feeling like. And I don't think we've really heard about anybody else doing that, but I guess it does depend if you feel like reading or you feel like listening. We also had somebody else write in, and so they're on the other side, and they said they disagree on watching it with without the dubbing and with the subtitles. This is from Team Carmega. He said that he watched the whole series in English with no subtitles. He understood everything they wanted him to throughout the show. There was heavy-handed music and repeating statements that helped push forward any points that they were trying to push forward, and had no issues understanding it. He also says he recommends trying it this way. That way you're not reading entirely too much on quote-unquote ominous music playing, and instead enjoying the cinematography a little bit more, the colors, facial expressions, the single tears, the music, things of that nature. So, Team Carmega says he's going to rewatch it in a few years with the subtitles, but wants to throw his hat in to say it's actually not bad watching it with the dubbing.
I'm sure it's not bad. It's just it's not my choice because then I'm not watching the actors perform. I want to see the actors and hear the actors' emotions, and you just don't get that in a dub. I watch a lot of shows with subtitles, a lot of foreign shows, and you get so much, even while you're reading it, just hearing the emotion in their voices colors the way you read the text. And I think you miss out a lot if you're not getting the original performances.
Yeah, I would never watch this show in English, to be honest. No offense to Carmega. And I appreciate, or whatever, I'm going to say your name wrong, like Ariande. Ariande Grande. But yeah, you're missing an emotional connection to the show. And eventually your eyes are trained enough to read and then focus on the action. So I've heard I just stare at the subtitles. You get better at reading the more you read.
I also think the more shows you watch in a language, you actually start to pick up the language, even if you wouldn't be able to translate it yourself without the subtitles, but you do get to pick things up. I watched a show where there was a character named Alice, and they kept saying everything is Alice, but in German that's alles, alles. And you actually get to hear the difference between when they say Alice and Alice, and you actually pick up the differences. I just think it's something that once you're listening to the original language, you get a feel for it so much better, even if you're not, you're losing a little bit of the comprehension because there's not quite the translation. You get close enough.
Yeah. And that's how, when I watched that show Marianne last year that Aaron recommended to me, I took French in high school, but I remember very little of French. But it actually was a little bit easier watching that because I did remember some things from French. So it was like, I could recognize that stuff, even though I remember in high school when I took French, they would have they would play the listening things that you would have to then answer questions based on. And I was always terrible at that. But getting it in the context of that show, which I know, Aaron, that was one of the shows that you recommended based off of this. It was easier to follow with that little bit of context.
Yeah.
Chan G talked about how Chan appreciated that we brought up the lighting in the post-apocalyptic world, especially in Eve's Lair, and how it was sandy as opposed to the dark raininess of Jonas's Adam's world. And Chan also mentioned that a couple other things that they noticed: the color palette for the school and the character wardrobe in Eve's world were much more sophisticated, and was thinking that symbolizes Eve's world being more intellectual and sophisticated than Adam's world. For example, Eve's world has a more advanced time travel technology as opposed to the rugged, rough technology like a clunky suitcase with a time machine in it. So, not really a question, but if you guys have any thoughts on that, if you noticed that.
I think they did a nice job of you pretty much knew if you didn't recognize just the rooms were reversed and you could just tell by looking at it which world it was. Like the color palettes were different, and just also in the origin world, the aspect ratio is different. So even if you didn't quite say, oh, there's something subliminal there that you notice something was different, and you're like, wait, this is different. I think they did a nice job of being very consistent. Even when they traveled from time period to time period, you kind of got a feel for it instantly. It wasn't as confusing as you would think 17 different time periods would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Aaron, I think that's something that we didn't really talk about too, is that we did talk about the differences, the mirroring and the different aspect ratio, but did you feel like Eve's world seemed a lot more sophisticated than Adam's world?
I noticed some subtle aspects of it maybe, but just in general, I was more focused on it just being different. I don't think it was necessarily better or worse. I just think in some ways it was more precise, and in other ways it wasn't maybe. So, yeah, but
yeah, I think one thing that sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but one thing that I was thinking as we're talking about this question is that Eve's world is the one that came up with the ball machine to travel between worlds. It doesn't seem like Adam ever came up with that technology on his own, and only is able to do that after he receives the ball from Claudia at the end.
Well, he doesn't even travel between worlds until he gets the ball. Like
right.
he doesn't know that there's. I don't know that there isn't a machine, a different machine in Eve's world that helps you travel through time. That with like an iPhone 1 versus an iPhone 10, kind of thing. Like I said, they might have just developed it sooner and you've had more incarnations of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Eve's time travel machine has like the curved mirrors around it, and it looks similar to Adam's, but also obviously has the ball machine to travel between worlds. All right, let's go to some questions on Claudia. So Colin said that he knows it seems the show's set up with that Claudia's motivation is to save her daughter, but do you not think she was also trying to save herself just as much? She must have known that she was not a part of the original knot, and that in the origin world, a gray-haired, or in the origin world being Adam's world, a gray-haired older version of her would exist. Oh, no, in the origin world, a gray-haired older version of her would exist. It's a time travel, so she would get some more time with her daughter. Not sure she was being as altruistic as she was being portrayed. Aaron, we'll go to you.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that Claudia has been portrayed throughout this show as smarter than everybody else, as having like a very, very high amount of intelligence. So, yeah, I think that if her motivations in the shadow were self-involved, I don't think that's too far off for any character really deep down. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of the theme with all the characters.
Well, in origin world, Claudia would not know what the other version of her did to create this origin world, or to maintain this origin world. But she's, I guess maybe she has dreams about that other version of herself. Motivations, do you think it was fully just to get Regina, or do you think she had her own sensibilities that she was trying to protect as well?
I think definitely she isn't completely above saying, well, my life might be better in this other world, so I'll shoot for that. But she's also experienced meeting the other version of herself. She's she's a character who has seen, oh, okay, so this completely other version of me can exist, and I can have no knowledge of it and no connection to this other me, to the point where I can just shoot her in the head and not really feel bad, because it's not me. So I don't necessarily think that she's thinking about her own personal gain of a better life. It's just it is like she'll get the time with her daughter because she won't have to lose her daughter. I think it's more just that, and her daughter will get to move on, and therefore the family line will live on, and that's that imperative, I think, is what drives her. I don't, as smart as she is, I think she gets a lot wrong along the way. I think we see a lot of the things that she says she's completely wrong about. Just it happens to work out for her because that's the way things have always gone. When she meets Adam and says, you still don't know how this game is played. And he goes, well, is this the first time we've had this conversation? It's like, yep, it's the first time. Well, it couldn't have been the first time. It's an impossibility for that to have been the first time, because when Adam goes and confronts Eva with the gun, she says, yeah, this is where you kill me because you always come. Well, if he always goes, that means that's part of the loop, and that he always gets told by Claudia. So, Claudia, as much as she knows, it's still that ocean out there. She only knows the drop, and she's wrong. So I think everybody's motivations on the show seem to be about perpetuating the line and protecting your children. To the point where you're willing to do horrible, horrible things in order to protect your child, aka Ulrich, to kill a child so that he can get his own child back. It's a theme of the show where you'll do horrible things, but you've got this failsafe. You think. I think it's one of the built-in things about the show, which makes the origin, the trio, your three ninjas, as it were.
Three ninjas, yes.
Yes. I called them the Vandellas because, the Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, Martha Eve and the Vandellas. I know you're not going to get that reference, but older folks like me are laughing hysterically. But yeah, I mean, I just love the fact that they've created a show here where the fact that they travel together, the young, middle, and old version of the ninjas together, I think that's great because it's a lot of characters have plot armor where they can't be killed. Well, yeah, you can't kill the younger version of this thing or the middle version of this thing because you see the old guy right there, which means you actually cannot kill him. It is plot armor that is perfect because he gets old because the old guy's right there. So even if you kill the old guy, it's not going to stop you from being killed if he wants to kill you. So I think that is just a great another aspect of the show where it's almost like last person who takes the time travel machine for a spin is in control. So that's another reason why Claudia thinks she's in control, because it's just like, you've all done this stuff, but Adam, I've traveled after you, and therefore I know. But she doesn't know that he then travels after her, so which gives him the upper hand. It's this game of tides coming in and out that you're just completely unaware of.
Yeah, I was very confused by when Eve told Adam that, yeah, this is when you come here and you kill me, and he didn't. But apparently there was a version of him, of Adam, that goes to Eve and is not changed by this, does not take the bullets out of the gun, does kill Eve, which is what turns Martha into Eve. So we didn't see what that other side of that switch point would be, but it did have to always happen, which means that there did always have to be some conversation between Claudia and Adam to get him the ball machine so he could travel there.
Yeah, and it's all part of the loop. I mean, I think that Jonas and Alt Martha going into the time tunnel is also part of the loop that always happens, because otherwise she wouldn't remember having seen him through the time tunnel.
Yep.
If it was the first time it had happened, then she wouldn't have the memory of it happening. But she does, which means it happened before. So, again, everything that we see is part of the loop. Everything, even though the characters themselves don't know it.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to get into we get into some of the more picky stuff, which is the stuff I had written down before the finale, right? I had my questions that I had written down. This was going into the finale. I created my list of questions. I think we did them on the podcast. I said, why was this time different? Why is the I guess this is my questions I wrote down after I watched the finale, actually. Why was this time different? Why did Claudia change things? I think we've talked about some of that. We talked about this a little bit. Why was the baby missing from the car? We never really got payoff on that, unless potentially what AJ was saying, that maybe Eve sent people to take the baby out of the car. One thing I'd love to talk a little bit more about is just Agnes in general. We really don't know much about Agnes. We get what we see on the character tree that we see in Eve's headquarters, and that Agnes is connected to the Three Ninjas. It seems like that is her and the Three Ninjas had Trante as that was the parents of Trante, and that would be why we don't see any Nielsen's in the origin world, and they seemingly do not exist. But is there any more to that, or is it just this was this happened because it always happens? So Agnes had to be with these characters and create babies in both worlds to create these characters.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much, she plays her part because she again, it's the whole, is there free will or not? And it doesn't appear that there is. I mean, no matter what she does, she can dally for a little bit with Egon's wife, perhaps for a little while, but she's already fulfilled her purpose at that point. Mm-hmm. Until she's called upon again to, all right, yeah, you had your fun, good, great. Now take these papers and give them to Claudia. She's got her marching orders, so she follows them. Like, she may be able to take a little vacation from time to time when she's not needed, but everybody in this this split world has their marching orders, and they really can't stray from them.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's see. So we've got some stuff from Christina. She had similar thoughts on the finale as me. She said, actually, it was very, very similar to me. She said that she loved the show so much that it was hard for her to even start the finale, just like I felt, and that built it up a lot. And that when she finally did watch it, she felt a little underwhelmed, and that she did have some more specific questions that were not answered in the finale, and she was curious if we had any thoughts on them. So the first was Alexander moving to Winden because of an alleged murder. But do you guys have any more thoughts on what happened? Aaron, I think you and I talked about this on the finale recap show. I don't know if you have any more thoughts.
No, not really. I mean, I'm still kind of same spot with it, but maybe AJ has some thoughts about it.
Yeah, AJ, did you have any thoughts on Alexander's? It just seems like my problem with it always seemed like the timeline didn't match up. That it says 33 years, but we see him running in the ski mask in November of 1986.
No, I never had a problem with it because he never time traveled. So, mm-hmm. There was a red herring, certainly, and it makes perfect sense that if there's no Ulrich in this world, then there's no reason for Katarina and Hannah to be fighting over him. There's no reason for him to be in a relationship that will cause Regina to be tied up by the caves, and there's no reason for her to meet him. So it's as simple as that. The entire cause of her meeting him and then having Bartosz is removed from the equation.
Mm-hmm. And I think that too is, yes, Regina is alive and does not have cancer in this world, but we don't know if she's with anybody. We don't know if she has any kids, and if kids are such a important theme for this show that everybody's so tied up with wanting to make sure their kids have a happy life. It doesn't seem like Regina has any kids in that final dinner scene.
No, certainly doesn't. Although, again, we didn't see other rooms. We don't know if there's a baby monitor there that just hasn't gone off.
They're celebrating something. Yeah, we don't know what.
Right.
It seemed to me like they're celebrating like a job. I don't know, but who knows?
Who knows? Maybe she met this really cute guy from another town whose name was Alexander. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah, maybe the announcement of a power plant being built.
Oh, and and then her hotel that she runs is going to be overrun with people, so she's going to have lots of business coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Christina also said, how did Peter meet Helge, and what kind of relationship did Helge have with Peter's mother? I think this is Prime World Peter, not Origin World Peter.
Yeah.
So we see Peter getting off the bus. We know he knows he's a son of a Doppler, but and then he finds Helge.
Yeah. Yeah. If Helge is not involved in getting beaten, it certainly would mean that he would be more likely. I think we're all just thinking about the unlikeliness of him to have had a kid. I think that's what we were hung up on. Mm-hmm. But I think the fact of his presence in there shows that he probably had a relationship with someone before he got too beat up. I don't have an answer. Yeah. I also don't need an answer. Peter's presence is proof that it happened. Mm-hmm. And he was never tied into the time knot, so it's fine by me.
Yeah, it does seem like that. Again, that is shown by the last scene. One thing I actually was thinking is all that we know is that Peter gets off the bus and is looking for Doppler, and he never says Helge because we see him. He goes to the house and sees it says Doppler, and he assumes that that's his father. Now, in the one thing Aaron pointed out is in that dinner scene that Bernd is in the family picture with Claudia, and so he thinks that it means that Bernd was Regina's father the whole time, that Bernd and Claudia had a relationship. We do see, Bernd is kind of a mystery man where he disappears a lot from time to time. We don't really know where he is or what he's doing. Could it be that Bernd actually was the one who had the relationship with Peter's mother, not Helge, and Peter just assumes it's Helge because of the age?
Well, I mean, it's certainly not like anybody in this show to step out on their spouses. So no, that couldn't possibly happen. Yeah, absolutely. That totally could have happened too. Conceivably he could have been lied to by his mother, and they didn't do a DNA test, and he just took over the life because Helge wanted to have a son, and that's possible too, and that certainly could have mirrored itself in this world. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be genetic at all. So I'm fine with whatever explanation it is, because there's nothing contradictory that we've been shown. So it's like we're not gonna know every detail of every relationship, and the ones that we don't have, for me, I'm fine with not knowing the answers, because again, I don't need them to answer questions as long as they're internally consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole Waller's eye of it. I don't care.
Oh,
it's actually hilarious.
So it's funny. In Christina's email, she said that she heard that the actor who plays Waller had an accident on his eye before they started filming the first season, so they just added it as a character beat on the show for that character.
Absolutely. Perfect. And that's hilarious. And I know when Josh Wigler interviewed Baron Bohardar, he said, "So are we ever going to find out about Waller's eye?" He's like, "Finding out what happened to Waller's eye is like knowing the existence of God. It'll never be revealed." So they planned it up as a joke. And when they played it up, when they had it in the second season, when he almost revealed it, but they almost hit Claudia with the car, and they didn't, I said, "Okay, now I never want to know." I think it's just funnier if we don't. The funniest thing of the entire season is showing up in the alt world with 2 eyes and then no arm. I mean, that's just such a sense of humor in a show that has very little humor in its final storylines. That when you have humor like that, I say run with it. And again, I don't need to know a reason for that, even though it was brought up and it seemed to be a question that was out there. I don't need to know. It doesn't ruin the show for me at all. They answered every question that had to do with the plot and the main storyline, and they answered it in a way that you can come away with an interpretation that's different from Aaron's and different from mine, and we can all be satisfied. I think that's just something you just don't see in television art these days.
I don't think you ever see it. I've said this before, and I think it's one of the best shows ever.
I'm with you. Between this, I'm a big Twin Peaks fan.
Yes.
And
I'm making my way through it right now.
I think Twin Peaks is it's a little bit of the second season when David Lynch went away and someone else ran the show for a few episodes. It's a little rough, but I love Twin Peaks, and I love the return, which just shouldn't work on any level, but it does because Lynch is just brilliant. But Mr. Robot and The Leftovers, I think all 4 of those just really stuck the landing, and we're very lucky that all the shows are in the last a little bit of time. I think a lot of shows in the past did not stick the landing, and all of these shows did, and we're juggling a lot of balls. Really hard. Leftovers ending is perfect because it's a 50-50 split of people who watch that last episode and whether or not A happened or B happened, and it's pretty much it's a 50-50 split, and I think that just amazing.
Aaron will finish Leftovers at some point.
I'm in season 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that takes us right to, I have a section of this that is new shows. These are shows that other people have recommended that they like, and they're also big Dark fans. So the first, Chad Adams on Twitter, he said we should definitely check out 12 Monkeys. And I said, oh, funny, you should mention 12 Monkeys. I know AJ Mass is a big fan of the 12 Monkeys show, not the movie too, but the show specifically.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the movie as well. But I thought the first season of 12 Monkeys was really, really good. I thought they took on the time travel thing. They even steered harder into it than Dark does. and really stuck the landing on season 1. I don't necessarily feel that seasons 2 and 3 really, it steered off a little bit. I think it lost its way a little bit.
Did it only do 3 seasons?
I stopped watching because it lost its thread for me.
I watched the first season, and for some reason I always think of you when it comes to that show. I don't know. Did you podcast about that show, or were you just tweeting about the show that you liked it?
It was the first movie that Mike and I did for the Hamster Factor.
Yeah, I remember you did the movie, but I feel like something about the TV show I always think.
We discussed the TV show in the movie because because seriously it been on. Yeah, like I said, I really liked 12 Monkeys first season. I prefer Continuum. If you're going to watch a time travel show, I would definitely recommend Continuum, which is also on Netflix. And that is a show that really stuck the landing on especially as a time travel show. Like halfway through the first season, they really address a lot of these time-honored tropes of time travel and said, yeah, we're not doing those. And we're recognizing them, and this is our interpretation. Are you going to stick with us or not? And if you stick with them, it's phenomenal.
I've never even heard of Continuum.
Oh, Continuum is fantastic. In fact, Warrior Nun, which is currently just started on Netflix. Warrior Nun, the writer of Warrior Nun, is the writer-creator of Continuum.
Aaron, have you heard either of these shows?
I heard of Warrior Nun that just came out, but not Continuum. So
highly recommend. If you like Dark, you'll like Continuum.
Add Continuum to your watch list. Christina, who I think is the same Christina that wrote in the last feedback, she said she recommends 3%. If you've never seen it, it's a Brazilian show that's on Netflix.
First season.
I don't know anything about.
First season. I don't think so. I haven't watched season 3 yet. Season 2, but season 1 is fantastic. Yeah, it's a Brazilian show. It's kind of a cross between Hunger Games and The Genius.
But is it like a game show then, or
no,
is it
no? It's a drama, but it's if you watch the first episode, you'll see it's like the Hunger Games meets The Genius.
Not letting myself start any new shows until I finish The Wire. I put my Wire watching on pause while I was watching Dark, and now I need to get back and
fair enough. I'm just here to recommend stuff. So far I'm on board with 3%. I'm on board with it, but all just right. Season 1.
So Robert recommended The Leftovers, which I think we've talked highly about. The Leftovers. At least 2 of us here talked a lot about it. And then Jesse recommended Fringe, which I only know Fringe because that was like the next J.J. Abrams produced show after Lost, and I've never really watched Fringe.
Season 1 is very bumpy. I don't think they knew what exactly they wanted to do with the show, but around halfway through season 1, it really finds itself. It's really good. I mean, John Noble's in that, and John Noble is an incredible actor. And yeah, I say if you can make it through the really lame and not quite focused Monsters of the Week for the first few weeks, you'll be rewarded very well with. It's a really good series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard with the network shows because there's so many episodes, so it's such a bigger commitment than a 8-episode season of Dark, 10-episode season or something.
Yeah, but this one, I don't think they knew what they wanted to do with it right off the bat. But once they figured it out, it started working.
Okay. Aaron, any other shows that you want to recommend that you think people would like if they like Dark?
Let me see. I don't think so particularly. I've started to watch Hannibal a little bit. Speaking of network shows, but that's nothing like Dark. But
it does have Mads Mikkelsen in it, though, right?
Yeah, it has Mads Mikkelsen. So we found Mads. He's in Hannibal.
Yes. I'd also say, in AJ, are the Hamster Factor podcasts still alive somewhere on the internet?
I believe they're still available. Yeah, I don't think Mike took them down, so they should still be up there.
So AJ did a movie podcast that they covered each week. AJ would pick a movie for his co-host Mike and that he had never seen, and they would come in and talk about him. And a lot of times they dealt with these real heady sci-fi themes. And yeah, one of the movies they did was 12 Monkeys. I'm trying to think of some other ones that you guys did. Brazil, which I still have saved in my podcast queue for when I watch Brazil. Never seen it.
Yeah, we did a lot of. You can go through our catalog, you'll find a lot of time travel movies in there, a lot of sci-fi. We wanted to do a lot of movies that had some sort of ending that was debated or confusing, and discuss that. I was kind of the curator, being about 25 years older than Mike Bloom, my co-host, and it was really a fascinating ride for me to go back and revisit movies that I thought I had liked, and now watch it and goes, oh, I guess I didn't like them. Just to watch some bad movies that suddenly were better with time. It was really cool, and we eventually branched off not just into sci-fi, but just musicals and dramas, and we hit a whole big variety of films. But it was a fun little project there that we did for a few years.
Yeah, I feel like Predestination, the movie Aaron's talked about a bunch, would definitely fall under the type of movie you guys would have talked about on that podcast.
Yeah,
Didn't
definitely
get to that one, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely that movie. I definitely recommend to all Dark fans to watch that.
So did you watch Predestination then, since the podcast?
Haven't gotten around to it. It is on my list. But everyone should start with Primer.
Yes.
Of
which
course.
is a must, and if you can get through Primer, you can get through anything.
I've watched Primer like 3 or 4 times, and I think every time I watch it, I'm still like so confused by it. But Primer's a good primer for time
watch
travel.
It post-dark, maybe it'll be a little easier.
That's true. Yeah. There was another one that you guys did, and it was definitely less confusing than Dark or Primer. It was the one with the photos, with
yes.
where it was like every day they see a photo from the next day. What was that movie called? Do you remember?
I know exactly what movie you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, it was a fun film because it was unexpected how well it was. We did a lot of those films on Netflix that I just found there that there was one movie where there was a time portal. The whole movie takes place in a 24-hour span, and it's like they went ahead 24 hours and everybody was dead, and then he came back and they were like, well, there's no way we're gonna end up like that. Well, yeah, we have to.
Right. There's when it's done well, I love time travel. I mean, I've been huge Back to the Future fan my whole life, so anything time travel totally get me going. Speaking of, did either of you guys watch Palm Springs yet on Hulu?
I did.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It's hard to tell since there's so few new movies coming out, but it's definitely 2 of my favorite movies of the year came out this weekend. So
what was the other one?
First Cow.
I did see First
movie. Yeah, love that movie. Very, very slow, but also slow is not a bad thing. So just have some patience, like with Dark.
Yeah, Palm Springs is awesome. I only knew a little bit about it going in. I will just say it's kind of like another one of those heady sort of sci-fi romantic comedies. So it's my current number 1 movie of 2020, but that's number 1 out of 6, I believe. So I haven't seen very many new movies this year. So
yeah, I'd also recommend About Time. It's a film.
I've heard that's good. I've never seen that.
Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams. Rachel McAdams, who's in 4 or 5 time travel movies, and never as the time traveler. But it's a delightful film. It's a rom-com, but with time travel, and I was not expecting it to be nearly as delightful as it was, and so I recommend that. And I guess for a TV show, if you can catch Devs, I think it's worth the short run. And I would watch if you're like me and you really like weird stuff. There was a show called Dispatches from Elsewhere, which was on AMC. It is Jason Segel, Sally Field, a really awesome new actress named Eve Lindley, and Andre 3000 are your 4 leads. It's really great. Just don't watch the finale. It's the
sucks.
worst. It's the worst finale I've ever seen. It completely off the and intentionally so, completely off the rails. And there are some people who really, really liked it, but I'm not even gonna get into it. Watch up until the end of episode. I think it's 10 episodes. Watch up until the end of episode 9, and say, you know what, I'm done. This was great. I enjoyed it.
Create the ending in your head.
It ends without. There's one question that's loosely left open there, and then they go to answer that one question, and yeah.
Now I might watch it just to see how I want to see what this ending is that you're talking about.
Oh. Well, please tell me when you've done it, and you'll say yes, you were right. I shouldn't have watched it.
And I did just do a little Googling real quick. The movie that we were trying to think of the name of that you podcasted about is Time Lapse from 2014.
Time Lapse, yes.
And it is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. So if you're looking for something to watch, I enjoyed Time Lapse.
It's moved to Amazon Prime. I'm glad it's found a new home. I watched it on Netflix back in the day.
Oh, and another movie I definitely recommend with time travel is Time Crimes. Such a great time travel. Yeah, it's one of the best uses of time travel I've ever seen in a movie.
Is that enforced by the Time Cop?
I don't want to spoil anything.
It's a spin-off from Time Cop. All right, well, I don't even know how we go to any of these other questions from talking about future things to talk about. Do either of you have like any, long-standing, either like smaller questions or bigger philosophical questions about Dark before we close this one out?
I'm good. Like I said, you can certainly hear me expand on some of these takes a little bit longer on my post-show recaps podcast about this. But yeah, I thought the series answered, like I said, all the questions that it needed to answer for me. And like I said, anything that was left hanging was either something that I could headcanon myself and nothing that broke the rules of the show, or just we thought was important and just wasn't, which happens in a show that's a mystery where you're going to start reading into every picture on the wall and every line of dialogue, and they're like, you know what, that just wasn't part of the story they were telling. So I can let that go from season 1 and season 2. You have to throw a few red herrings in there, or else we're all going to go, oh yeah, this is stupid. There's no drama here at all.
Yeah. Aaron, how about you? Anything else you want to add to this podcast?
No. I definitely, after getting through all 26 episodes of the show, I feel like it was definitely a worthy investment of my time.
Oh yeah.
And that is still about a week later or so after I've seen the finale. It's still the feeling I have more than anything else is relief that they stuck to the themes and the bones of the show down to the end, and it didn't forget who it was. So, yeah, it's only getting better with time as I get further away from it. But yeah, I'm just really, really happy that this was the first show I chose to really deeply dive into. I don't know if I'll ever be able to have the same immersive experience if I ever do another show like this. It's tough to start with this and try to raise the bar from there. So
yeah, the first show that I deep dove into on the aforementioned post-show recaps was House of Cards, which did not have the same payoff, did not have the same satisfying conclusion that Dark did, but also is a Netflix show. So if you watch House of Cards, you can hear me talk about it from many years ago. So, and yeah, I still do have in this document all kinds of questions that are a little bit more, what happened with Hannah's baby, or why didn't they introduce Tannhaus earlier? What was the point of Alexander and Clausen's storyline? And I think I'm the only one who's like, I'd love to bang the drum on these little things that they didn't answer, but
well, Hannah had a miscarriage.
Okay, so that's what other people said too. So is that
that's obvious?
That was what happened. Okay, I did not pick up the shit.
That's not how pregnancies go usually, where it looks like you got assassinated in the stomach.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was all bloody. So it was just okay. So she had a miscarriage because other people wrote that in as well too.
Yeah, she had a miscarriage, and then Egon took her with his time machine back to meet him as his younger self, so she could have Celia.
Okay, yep. That's what. Yeah, I will say. Both Adrian Colley and Chanji wrote in about that and said that there was too much blood for her just to be going into labor. It must have been a miscarriage. And Egon and Chanji pointed out Egon saved her to take her back to the 1950s to meet the younger version of Egon and thus preserve his bloodline.
Yeah, Egon was just like a really expensive old Uber driver.
Cameo, yes.
You're Egon.
Right. Well, I can take that one out of my doc. Let's see. I'll just go through some of the other stuff. So another thing, Walter Prager wrote in and appreciated the Back to the Future reference when Celia is bearing her radiation suit. I also appreciated that. Dennis said the theme of the people who killed another character by bashing their head in, that we got that so much. We had Ulrich doing it to Helge. We had Elizabeth doing it to the intruder in the trailer. Helene Albers doing it to Katerina. And others as well. So it happens several times. Wonder if there's any significance to it. I think it's just kind of a running motif that they go with, is people getting their heads bashed in.
Yeah, it's just the blunt force of time, I think.
Oh, yes, there we go. The blunt force of time. And all right, here's a good one. So Rob and Tara wrote in and asked, they wrote in a couple questions, but they said, did Noah realize that he was killing his father in 1921?
Did he realize he was killing his father in 1921? That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters, because I think at that point he was such a Adam head that he would have done whatever Adam said. So I don't think it would have mattered to him, for he truly believed at that time. Be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's one that can be written off. Not really written off, but said that, this is what always happened. Adam told him this is what happened, and even Bartosz, when he is getting killed, he said he knew it was coming at some point. He didn't seem surprised by it.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they would love to see more of Eve's World in a spinoff or more episodes, like how does Egon become a traveler, and was Charlotte the Hannah of that world, and how did Peter become a priest?
Yeah, if it would be interesting in some, if there was a show of Dark where we watched season 1 and followed that world, and then discovered Adam, but it's it's a different show. But I could see that being an interesting entry into that world. But that's what fanfic is all for.
Yeah, I think that this is one of these, it's better left unknown, because even in this show, when certain things were repeated over and over again, they started to feel a little repetitive. If they did an entire season of that, I think that we'd be like, why do we have to see this? Couldn't they have just kind of explained this and let us fill in the blanks? I think this is one of these where it's like, I don't think people really wanted to see the same world, but just a little bit different for a season. I don't think you really want that.
No, I don't mean that, but I just, as a thought experiment, I think it would be interesting if we had been introduced to Martha first. What would our take be on the storyline? That kind of stuff I like thinking about. But
no, I agree. I'm saying just like Rob and Tara, like saying they wanted a spin-off season of like showing all the ways that things are the same but different. It's not quite that exciting to see, really.
Oh, great. 5 more episodes of Killian. Super.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I think that, it's just one of the things about the third season I loved overall is just how it was able to tell the amount that was able to tell in 8 episodes is mind-blowing to me. It was so great.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think it will be achieved again for a long time.
Yeah, I think I am a huge fan of what they were able to accomplish, and it took me a while to come around to some of the things in the finale, but that is why we have this podcast, is so I can work through those feelings and those thoughts and understand a little bit more. And I'm glad that you guys were able to help do that with me today. And Aaron, I'm glad that you and I were able to do that over these last month and a half that we've been doing this podcast.
Yeah, I think so. Been fun.
All right. Well, we'll be back with something. We don't know what it is, but stay tuned, stay subscribed. We'll do something dark related at some point in the near future. It won't be 33 years, nothing like that. And AJ, what are some of the things that you were doing these days, or we're doing?
Oh, first of all, thanks for having me on. It was great to join the pod and be a part of it, because I do love this show, and good to have listened to you guys and your journey along the way. It was kind of fun. I'm writing for ESPN, as I do. Wrote a fun article on a recent mock draft we did. You can find on the site, which is all in a Hamilton theme. So that was kind of fun to write. You can catch me there. I am the host of a trivia podcast called Beat My Guest. We're on hiatus right now, summer, but hopefully we'll be back in the fall with some new episodes. So we got about 5 seasons of that locked up there, and no time travel involved. So, should be. Oh,
you can go back in time and listen to old episodes.
Indeed.
Including one that I was on a few months ago.
Indeed. How'd you do on that one? I forgot.
So I didn't think I did well, But then I was like started listening from because I can't start podcasts in the middle. I have to start all the way at the beginning. So then I started listening from the beginning, and actually like I definitely did better than a couple people. And like realized I shouldn't have been as embarrassed about my score as I thought I should have been.
No problem. You should never be embarrassed. The whole point of the show, the trivia is a MacGuffin. It's all just about having a conversation, having fun, and an excuse for me to riff. So it's all good. But yeah, if you're into trivia, give it a listen. It's a fun little podcast. There's some, like I said, I think the old episodes of the Hamster Factor with me and Mike Bloom were up there as well. And if you just want to hear more about Dark, go to Post Show Recaps. Josh Wigler of The Hollywood Reporter and myself did a lovely little recap of the season 3 on there. So you can give a listen to that.
I wouldn't want to attempt to talk about this show in an hour and a half or however long you guys talked about it. You have to be very concise to do that.
It was a lot of it was just me talking Josh down about the finale.
Oh, good. Oh, man. Yeah. Now that we're done with this podcast, I can finally go back and listen to those. So I'm excited too.
You probably heard a lot of it already, but yeah, go for it.
But I'll get to hear it in 1.5x speed, so it'll be better. So, all right, and Aaron, you also do trivia stuff. Tell people about the trivia stuff you do.
Yeah, so I'm part of a YouTube channel with my friend Tony Heald, and we have started a trivia league over there. It's called Feature Presentation Productions is the name of the YouTube channel, and then Feature Presentation Trivia League is the name of our trivia league. We're always allowing new people to enter. It's similar to if you've watched on YouTube the Schmodown. It's just a movie trivia face-off and team face-offly. We do it all over StreamYards. And yeah, it's just it's fun. We also have shows on there. We have a show every Wednesday called Fantasy Film Fights where we draft 5 different movies in different categories. So just basically you can either look us up on Facebook at Feature Presentation Productions or on YouTube at Feature Presentation Productions. You can reach out to me on Facebook or at Aaron J or on Twitter at Aaron J.A.Y. Brooks if you're interested also. And then I do a UFC podcast called Inside the Distance. So we break down every single UFC card. So right now there's 3 UFC cards in Abu Dhabi in the next 8 days. So I have one, I'm doing a breakdown tonight live on Facebook and YouTube under Fight Bananas is the name of the YouTube channel. So like fight and then bananas like the fruit. At 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be live with UFC featherweight Andre Mr. Highlight Ewell, where we'll be breaking down the card from this past Saturday and also the card coming up this Wednesday live on ESPN, July 15th. So check me out there. Yeah, those are the podcasts I'm doing, and then whatever we end up doing next.
AJ, are you a UFC fan?
I am not, although I did meet John Bones Jones when I was on my book tour a few years back, but that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Yeah. It's a great time to get into the sport with every other sport still shut down. The UFC is chugging along. So Wednesday on ESPN.
Yeah, I'll stick to my Korean baseball league and my Australian rules football and my marble league on YouTube.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and then so I have a movie podcast. It is somewhat inspired by AJ's Hamster Factor, where we pick a movie each week, and then at the end of the podcast, we take suggestions for movies that somehow connect to the movie that we talked about, and then connect to that movie and do another movie podcast the next week based on that. So that movie podcast is called The Movie Ladder. I'm actually about to record that as soon as we hang up here. This week we were talking about Newsies. Last week we talked about Hamilton, so the connection there being a musical that is somewhat produced by Disney and is streaming on Disney Plus. And then we will be picking something based off of Newsies to talk about next week. Maybe it'll be a Christian Bale movie. Maybe it'll be another movie about the press. So we have about 26, 27 podcasts up on the Movie Ladder podcast feed if you're interested. You can follow @LadderMovie on Twitter to find out more information about that. We also did a special for the small Venn diagram of people who are Dark fans and also Survivor fans. We did a big Survivor rankings bonus episode last week as well. That was like 3 hours of us talking about all 40 seasons of Survivor. So that was fun as well. So definitely check all of that out. And we'll be back with something else at some point on Digesting Dark. If you have any suggestions or for like types of shows or guests or things like that, email us digestingdarkpod@gmail.com and we'll see what we can do. So With that, any last words about Dark before we walk into that bridge?
No, just thank this is like the show Dark itself exceeded my expectations. I mean, not that I had a lot of Twitter followers before, but it's like doubled or tripled as a result of this show. So that's been interesting, and I just appreciate everybody who's listened. All the people who've listened to me recommend this show finally, yeah, the people in the future are listening to this. We hope we did it justice as well. So thank you for joining us on this journey. It's been fun.
Yeah, definitely. This was an idea that we had just because the two of us were going to watch Dark, and we thought, well, we want to stop in between each episode instead of watch them all in the first 8 hours that the show is out, unlike some people. So that was why we came up with this idea, and just kind of worked itself out. So glad we were able to do it, and thank you guys all for being along the journey with us and continuing. We hope to be in your ears again sometime soon. All right, and thanks once again, AJ. You follow him at AJ Mass on Twitter is how you can follow AJ, follow all the work that he's doing, and we will see you guys sometime soon.
One more time. See ya.